Good evening. Welcome to News Plus here on Loveworld USA. I'm TGK Andre.
And I'm Joel Richard.
Let's take a quick look at the top headline stories we have today. Trump's Medicaid reform bill divides lawmakers along party lines. Federal immigration raids in Los Angeles result in dozens of arrests. Supreme Court grants Trump-era DOJ access to Social Security systems. Judge approves $2.8 billion settlement allowing colleges to pay athletes. And now, to the news. President Donald Trump's proposed legislation, known as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, has sparked partisan disagreement over its Medicaid reform provisions. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the bill would remove approximately 10.9 million people from Medicaid coverage, including 1.4 million illegal immigrants currently receiving state-funded benefits. Republican lawmakers defend the measure, stating that the proposed changes target individuals who are ineligible for Medicaid, including undocumented immigrants, duplicate enrollees, and able-bodied adults not actively seeking employment. We're reforming it, said Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama, who characterized the Democratic opposition as misleading. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana added that the bill simply enforces eligibility rules that should already be in place. Democrats have unanimously opposed legislation, warning that the requirements could result in millions losing health care access. They argue the bill imposes burdensome work documentation rules and reduces food assistance benefits. Senator Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut criticized the reforms as harmful, while Senator Jeff Merkley from Oregon said the bill prioritizes tax cuts over essential services. The CBO estimates the bill would reduce federal tax revenue by $3.7 trillion and raise deficits by $2.4 trillion over the next decade. As of June 5th, the national debt stands at $36.2 trillion, according to Treasury Department data. So in the situation, we're seeing, of course, there was expected opposition between the left and between the right on this big, beautiful bill. But a serious point of contention that we have here, Jola, is the fact that it's going to cut Medicaid. And this has been my issue with the left for the longest time. We see it in the recent ICE raids. We see it in the immigration issues. We see it in the enforcement of the law, where the fact is that we have people who are not supposed to be a part of a system taking advantage of a system. And although we can understand that healthcare is essential to everybody, when you have people who aren't accounted for in the system, these people being the illegal immigrants, taking up space and taking up taxpayer dollars on the system, we've seen it in the California Medi-Cal Act. This now forces the government, like ICE has been doing, to cast a wide net to eliminate a range of issues because they haven't been allowed to target a specific issue. The border czar, Tom Homan, said it all the way in February that they weren't trying to go after the illegal immigrants in a wide net, but the state governments, the local governments weren't complying with them to go and capture their specific targets. So they had to cast a wide net. Of course, it doesn't excuse the aggression. It doesn't excuse the underhanded tactics, but we're seeing time and time again that the government has to perform sweeping measures because they're not allowed to use precision to do what they need to do. What do you think?
You know, I think in a country where you have millions and millions of illegal immigrants coming into the country, and you have stark opposition against those specific class of people taking Medicare and Medicaid from people that should be eligible for it, I think when you have some kind of opposition of any kind to it, it's very alarming. You see millions and millions of dollars are given to these illegal immigrants that should be given to people that actually need it. And so with the ICE raids, especially with the California raids that we're going to talk about, you see the governor and you see the people in power in these certain states that are opposing that. And these funds aren't just going to illegal immigrants, they're also going to people that are also fraudulent with Social Security as well.
That's true.
Which is putting a lot of pressure on taxpayer money and increasing the tax they need to pay.
As well as duplicate enrollees.
Exactly.
You know? So, I mean, the issue is the fact that they're trying to cover all of the errors. I mean, like the Republicans said, a lot of these were already things that just need to be enforced, but have already been in place. Yeah. But now, I mean, if you're going to enforce everything that should be, they could have avoided this whole debacle if they just enforced them earlier. But now that you have the Republicans in charge, they're going to, cover all their bases. And of course, typically, if a Republican wants to clean house, they're definitely going to include the illegal immigrants. So honestly, I feel bad for them because they didn't need to be caught up in this, but because the Democrats couldn't enforce anything, the Democrats were at 0. The Republicans, to try to make up for it, have to go all the way to 100. And now they're caught in the crossfire as a result of the people who wanted to stand up for them not doing anything at all.
Exactly.
It's like me bringing a friend into the house, right? And I'm not letting my parents know. But instead of me trying to be as calm and peaceful as possible, I turn the speakers up. I make a mess. I'm taking as much food as I want out of the fridge.
Make it much worse.
And now, when it's time for my parents to come and retaliate or to react and respond, the measure is going to be much worse than if I just did it and kept everything else orderly. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing these people go through now. And honestly, it's such a shame because they don't deserve to be in the middle of this political crossfire.
Yeah. Very, very, very stark. Very, very interesting. Now, federal immigration authorities executed search warrants at 3 locations in central Los Angeles on Friday, resulting in the administrative arrest of approximately 44 individuals and 1 arrest for obstruction. The operations were conducted by Homeland Security Investigations in partnership with other federal agencies and included a focus on locations suspected of labor and document fraud. Among those arrested was David Huerta, president of SEIU California, who allegedly blocked federal agents from exiting the scene. Officials confirmed that Huerta would be arraigned on obstruction charges. Protesters quickly gathered in response to the raids, leading to tense confrontations with federal officers. Tear gas and non-lethal rounds were reportedly used to disperse crowds. Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and several local lawmakers condemned the raids. Newsom criticized the actions as politically motivated and harmful to communities, while members of the Los Angeles City Council issued a joint statement calling the enforcement efforts disruptive. U.S. Senator Alex Padilla also denounced the actions, calling them part of a broader pattern of federal overreach. Federal officers confirmed that at least one of the targeted locations was a clothing importer and wholesaler in the Fashion District suspected of employing individuals with falsified documents. Both the Los Angeles Police Department and Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department clarified they were not involved in the federal operations and urged the public to remain calm. Watch this.
Riot police faced off against anti-ICE protesters in downtown Los Angeles on Friday evening. The tense confrontation came after a day of federal immigration raids across the city. Dozens of people were reportedly taken into custody. This eyewitness footage appears to show one such raid, in which caravans of unmarked military-style vehicles and vans loaded with uniformed federal agents streamed through LA. ICE agents targeted several locations, according to the Los Angeles City News Service, as part of President Donald Trump's extensive crackdown on illegal immigration. Trump has vowed to arrest and deport undocumented migrants in record numbers. Live video of the subsequent protest showed LAPD officers lined up on a downtown street, wielding batons and what appeared to be tear gas rifles. Angelica Salas is the executive director of the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights.
Our community is under attack and is being terrorized. These are workers. These are fathers. These are mothers. And this has to stop.
Authorities had ordered demonstrators to disperse around nightfall. Early in the standoff, some protesters hurled chunks of broken concrete towards officers. Police responded with tear gas and pepper spray and also fired flashbang concussion rounds. An LAPD spokesperson said police on the scene had declared an unlawful assembly, meaning that those who failed to leave were subject to arrest. It was not clear whether there were any immediate arrests. Impromptu demonstrations had also erupted at some of the raid locations earlier in the day. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for information about its enforcement actions. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass issued a statement condemning the immigration raids, saying these tactics sow terror in our communities and disrupt basic principles of safety in our city.
California Gavin Newsom in recent times with President Trump is playing a part with how he sees the ICE's efforts in California. Now, to say that these ICE raids are politically motivated is borderline un-American, because I believe that these individuals in California, they would rather not have illegal immigrants in their neighborhood and taking their hard-earned taxpayer dollars and using it for extended Medicaid cuts. Like the CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, said that states, including California, have extended the Medicare to illegal immigrants. You know, they also stated that $3.5 billion has caused a shortfall on Medicaid because of California. So you see that these aren't just politically motivated, but it's also part of the rhetoric that Gavin Newsom is having with President Trump recently. What do you think about this?
That's a fair point. And I mean, we've discussed it on the show. I mean, here on News Plus multiple times. We understand the Medi-Cal debacle. Like you said, they are suffering, California is suffering a $3.5 billion, windfall because of this. And again, it's the issue that we covered in the previous story. You have these leftist politicians who cause issues out of the goodness of their heart, and you wonder why there's such a backlash to illegal immigrants. The illegal immigrants might be asking for health care, because who doesn't want, access to quality health care, especially in a country like America? But when that costs $3.5 billion because you make it available to all, considering their status, you're going to have taxpayers inside and outside of California who now have a bone to pick. Because you have people, who live there, who previously couldn't afford it, but now they expanded it to include the illegal immigrants. So do you mean to tell me that the citizens of California weren't good enough by themselves? But now that they had to widen the net, now it's okay for them to be included. But those who suffered for years before, oh, well, because you're legally here, we don't have to take care of you, but we can lump you in with the illegal immigrants who've come in here. And you wonder why the rhetoric is how it is. The issue has never necessarily been the illegal immigrants. And I can say that confidently. The issue has been how they've been treated. Let me put it like this. Imagine if Abraham in the Bible after having Ishmael and Isaac, prioritized Ishmael instead, the illegitimate son instead of the legitimate one. Right. Imagine how Isaac would have felt. So now you have to imagine how these American citizens feel when they saw their government prioritize illegal immigrants time and time and time again through FEMA, over veterans, over people who are struggling to pay insurance costs, who are struggling to pay for EpiPens, who are struggling to pay for asthma medication. You have to see where this rhetoric is coming from, and you have to see how such a politically divisive opponent like Trump won based on this rhetoric. But the Democrats and the left have failed to see this time and time again, and they're wondering why things keep on trending towards the right. You have to focus on what's going on at home first before you start extending charity to your neighbors. The Bible says that a man who cannot take care of his family is no worse than an infidel. Yeah. And I can say that we have infidels in the United States government. Take care of your family first, the family being the people and the good citizens of the United States.
Yeah. Just keeping in a divine point of view, the Bible says you must be born again. That's the only way. You must pass through the door. There's healthcare if you pass through the door the right way. And so you see how many taxpayer dollars have been spent because of the leftist radicals, their wrong application of the rule of law and broadening it to let it apply to people that it shouldn't be applied to.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Friday granted the Department of Government Efficiency access to Social Security Administration systems containing personal data on millions of Americans. The court's decision overturns a lower court's restriction that had limited DOJ's access under federal privacy laws. The ruling allows SSA to provide DOJ personnel with full access to agency records, including sensitive data such as school records, salary information, and medical history. The Trump administration has argued that such access is necessary for rooting out fraud and inefficiencies in federal programs. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented, citing privacy concerns. DOJ, originally led by Elon Musk, is tasked with reducing waste across federal agencies. Although Musk has since parted ways with the administration, the agency's mission continues. Lower court judges had raised concerns that the team's efforts within the SSA amounted to a fishing expedition, but the Supreme Court did not find current evidence of misuse. In a separate case, the court also paused an order that would have compelled Doge to disclose operational details under the Freedom of Information Act. The Trump administration maintains that Doge is an advisory body exempt from FOIA requirements. The justices have yet to rule on the full merits of that claim. Watch this.
But the Supreme Court handed the Trump administration 2 victories today in cases involving Doge, including giving it access to Social Security systems containing personal data on millions of Americans. The justices also separately reined in orders seeking transparency at Doge, the team once led by billionaire Elon Musk. The court's conservative majority sided with the Trump administration in the first Supreme Court appeals involving Doge. The 3 liberal justices dissented in both cases. Now, the Doge victories come amid a messy breakup that started shortly after Musk's departure from the White House and has included threats to cut government contracts and a call for the president to be impeached. In one case, the High Court halted an order from a judge in Maryland restricting the team's access to the Social Security Administration under federal privacy laws. Now, the court said in an unsigned order, quote, "We conclude that under the present circumstances, SSA may proceed to afford members of the SSA Doge team access to the agency records in question in order for those members to do their work. The agency holds sensitive data on nearly everyone in the country, including school records, salary details, and medical information." So a big win for Doge, the Trump administration, and Elon Musk, though he is no longer with Doge. Now, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said the court's action creates, quote, "grave privacy risks for millions of Americans by giving them, quote, unfettered data access to Doge regardless, despite its failure to show any need or any interest in complying with existing privacy safeguards, and all before we know for sure whether federal law countenances such access." Justice Sotomayor joined Jackson's opinion, and Justice Kagan said she would also have ruled against the administration here. So, this is a 6-3 ruling. The Trump administration says Doge needs access to carry out its mission of targeting waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government. Musk had been focused on Social Security as an alleged hotbed of fraud.
There's been a lot of talk about Doge this week, but it's good to see them getting the wins that they deserve. Of course, we covered the story about a week to 2 weeks ago when we reported that the Doge advisory team had successfully completed government training to be able to handle such sensitive data. Again, the purpose of Doge isn't to go digging through your medical history, to go digging through your silent information. The purpose is to make sure that fraud and waste is being rooted out. A singular part of that was when we found out that Doge had cleared millions of people from the United States database, from the Social Security Administration's database, who are over 120 years old. I mean, it's things that are that simple. And now this is just an extension of what their entire goal and aim is to do, which is just to make sure that the money that taxpayers are spending is actually being used for a good reason. So personally, the injunctions and the critiques against them having access to personal data, they are an advisory, adjutant to the United States government. It makes sense that they would have access to personal data, right, Jola?
You know, in line with what you said about taxpayer money being put to good use, you know, this is in line with how the USA Patriot Act, if you remember with 9/11, how there was a lot of rhetoric against the Patriot Act. And so you see that happening now because the primary goal for Doge is to uncover any fraudulent activities in the government. It's really the Department of Government Efficiency. And so statistics recently stated that 1.3 million individuals received Social Security benefits, and they were illegal, and they received Medicare as well. 10 million cases where Social Security numbers that people had were for people over the age of 120. So you see that, as we spoke about before, when there's fraud in the government, all efforts should be done to uncover it. And so I think it's noble what the Doge is doing currently, to uncover a lot of fraud in the Social Security.
You make a strong point. Although when we do discuss the Patriot Act that came after 9/11, we do also have to include the government overreach. I mean, as Edward Snowden, the whistleblower, confirmed, I mean, to the very ends that he's still being, harangued by the United States government to this day for discovering, I mean, how the government was wiretapping civilians, without their consent. I mean, we understand, as John Locke stated in in his writing from centuries ago, that part of the societal contract is that you give up certain freedoms in order to be governed.
Yeah.
And in response, the government provides you with certain liberties and protection. But there's also a step where it goes a bit too far. In the case that in order to assure your safety and your security, you're giving up more than you bargained for, and you don't become, because again, you're supposed to be an individual who's connected to a government, not a government-connected individual. And there's a difference. Because when the government knows everything that you can do, they can control everything that you can do. That's why it's supposed to be for the people and by the people. So you also have to understand where Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is coming from, because if you give a government an inch, they will take a mile, But we do understand DOJ's purpose isn't to spy on people like the Patriot Act that passed after 9/11. It's just to ensure that things are going as they're supposed to.
Yeah. A federal judge has approved a $2.8 billion settlement that would allow U.S. colleges to begin paying athletes directly, marking a historic change in college sports. The ruling permits schools to share up to $20.5 million per year with athletes and includes back payments to former players who were previously prohibited from receiving a share of athletic revenues. The case was initiated by former Arizona State swimmer Grant House, who sued the NCAA and its top conferences to challenge restrictions on revenue sharing. The approved settlement, known as the House Settlement, also addresses concerns over new roster limits, allowing athletes cut from teams under the new rules to return without penalty. The settlement signals a major shift in control from the NCAA to conferences like the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and Big 12, especially in high-revenue sports like football. It follows earlier challenges related to name, image, and likeness rights, and further erodes the amateurism model that governed college athletics for over a century. While the agreement aims to benefit top athletes, it may result in a reduction of walk-on opportunities and impact non-revenue sports, including Olympic development programs. Legal experts expect further litigation due to varying state NIL laws and the NCAA's push for federal regulation and antitrust protection. Let's take a look.
Federal judge signed off on arguably the biggest change in the history of college sports. Starting as early as next month, schools can share up to $20.5 million in the next year with athletes, ending more than a century of amateur-only rules. This all comes after a lawsuit by a former swimmer challenging the NCAA's revenue restrictions. In the next 10 years, $2.7 billion will also go to past players.
The NCAA, in regards to this settlement, the president said that this settlement has compromises, but it will result in extraordinary reliefs for people in past times, especially in 2016, that did not receive effective recompensation for their efforts in terms of athletic sports. But it also provides relief for the families for all the pain they endured. What do you think about this?
I mean, honestly, as you can see, there's a smile on my face, because you have to understand that for decades, there have been dozens of controversies about players receiving any type of help or any type of funding. I mean, we had Heisman winner Reggie Bush, one of the greatest, when I say greatest, I mean one of the greatest college running backs of all time. In fact, college athletes of all time have his Heisman Trophy, and to the viewers at home, a Heisman Trophy is the pinnacle of a collegiate athlete award in terms of football. It's like winning the MVP award, you know what I mean? So you are the best player in the NCAA football season that year. He had it revoked, and it was only reinstated to him earlier this year or late last year because he accepted money from marketing agencies. I mean, we had, the ever-joyous Jameis Winston, when he was playing in the NCAA, get severely penalized and have his draft stock drop because he was being paid in crab legs from a local grocery shop. Because God forbid that a college athlete wants to eat and, stay healthy in order to give their best on the field. Yeah. It's situations like this where you have to understand that these college athletes, especially in a sport like football or basketball, have put their bodies through immense conditioning and have also suffered immense pain, especially in football, in terms of the contact that they've taken. The average span of an NFL career is 3 years.
Yeah.
The average span of a college football career is 3.5 years. So on average, players typically spend more time in college playing football than they actually do in the NFL. But when they're playing and their bodies are being broken, bruised, and battered, some even facing career-ending injuries that will never make it into the NFL, what do they receive in compensation? Nothing. House and board? Cool. Food? Training and conditioning? That's lovely. But at the end of the day, the boosters who throw money into the football programs are throwing money in there because of them. When they're making college sports games that their schools and that the NCAA is making money off of, they're making it not off of the coaches or the executives of the colleges, they're making it off of the players. And what do the players get in return? They're supposed to sit there and dribble for food and board, as if they're not actually providing value to their schools in the first place. So it's good to see something that has been so obvious for so long come to light, because we'd call them student athletes for so long. But we've seen time and time again that these people were more athletes than students. And as athletes, you can't use it amateurism excuse anymore. It's good to see the government and the NCAA take a positive stand on this for the first time, and I'm excited to see the future of college sports going forward after this ruling. We will take a break, and when we return, we'll take a look at some of the stories that made the headlines this week. Don't go anywhere.
This is the month of June. And you already know this June is the month of prayer. And that means that we're going to pray more than we usually do. We're going to add some extra time to our praying. First of all, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I usually send out posts to you for prayer. But in the month of June, every Tuesday, and every Thursday, and every Saturday, you should get messages from your church and your cell on prayer. You're going to be praying, and then also early morning praying. It'll be according to the time zones. All right? So early morning in your time zone. I know you're thinking, so what is early morning? How early is early? Okay, I'll give you, should I give you a range of time or should I give you a specific time? I should give you a specific time. All right? 5, next 1 week. Then at the end of the 1 week, I'll tell you what else we're going to do. So we'll do this every day. So that's a beautiful one.
This excerpt is brought to you by Loveworld News.
Loveworld News, keeping the praise of God.
Welcome back. The Congressional Budget Office estimates President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill would reduce taxes by $3.7 trillion over the next decade, while increasing the federal deficit by $2.4 trillion. The House narrowly passed the measure 215 to 214 in May, and it now awaits revisions in the Senate. According to the CBO, the bill would result in 10.9 million additional people without health insurance, including 1.4 million non-citizens in state-funded programs. The updated version also raises the state and local tax deduction cap, reducing federal revenues by $128 billion over 10 years. The House-passed version trims $97 billion more from Medicaid and healthcare programs than the original proposal, totaling nearly $1.1 trillion in cuts. However, the larger tax cuts widen the projected deficit beyond earlier estimates. Despite GOP leadership backing the bill, some Republican senators have voiced opposition. Senators Rand Paul and Ron Johnson have raised concerns about the debt impact, complicating efforts to pass the bill in the closely divided Senate. Watch this.
The Congressional Budget Office on Wednesday lowered its estimate of how much President Donald Trump's tax cut and spending bill will add to the more than $36 trillion national debt. It now says it would add about $2.4 trillion over the next decade, down from a previous forecast of $3.8 trillion. Its assessment comes a day after key Trump ally Elon Musk blasted the bill as a disgusting abomination, giving fresh support to Republican deficit hawks who have been pushing back against it. Musk further criticized the spending bill on Wednesday, saying on X that, quote, "No one who actually reads the bill should be able to stomach it, and that a new bill should be drafted." House Speaker Mike Johnson said Musk's comments came after he and the billionaire had what Johnson thought was a productive conversation about the spending bill.
Elon and I left on a great note. We were texting one another, happy texts, Monday. And then yesterday, 24 hours later, he does a 180 and he comes out and opposes the bill. And it surprised me, frankly. And I don't take it personal. We don't take it personal. Policy differences are not personal. I think he's flat wrong. I think he's way off on this, and I've told him as much, and I've said it publicly and privately. I'm very concerned.
This has been a very interesting point of contention, and you have to understand the implications of this. The president has had a long-standing track record made public on his social media posts about being against increasing the budget deficit. I mean, he posted time and time again when Democrats were in office that if the budget deficit were increased, that the politician should be out of office, and that if he was in office, he would never do such a thing. However, it seems like things have changed. And of course, it's always beautiful to see the citizens and to see, of course, the taxpayers save money, but at what cost? The real issue behind this big, beautiful bill is the fact that it's big, but it's not beautiful. The cuts are a bit too robust, and without a solid and dedicated plan for the United States to make up for it, to make up for the $2.4 trillion deficit that it's planning to add, it's just expanding the hole. I'll put it in this context. From the time that the United States was formed, from 1776 to about the 1980s, it took that span of time for the United States debt to grow to $20 trillion. Or 18, roughly around that number. From that time till now, no more than 30 years, that number has doubled. And if this big, beautiful bill passes, we will be closely reaching the $40 trillion deficit mark. So you can understand the pushbacks from fiscal conservatives like Rand Paul and Ron Johnson, people who have been very critical about overextending the debt ceiling, which it looks like we're going to enter again. Jola, what do you think?
Well, in view of the Republican opposing of this bill, Secretary Scott Bessent said that what's important is that the economy grows faster than the debt. So, yes, of course, there are problems about the debt, not wanting to make that hole bigger. But you see, from the leftist point of view, Medicaid costs federal taxpayers about almost $1 trillion in the 2024 fiscal year. $2 million were used for sex changes in Guatemala. $1.5 million were used to advance DEI in Serbia, and $1 million in taxpayer dollars was used for Hamas-linked charities. Now, of course, that's in line with the USAID, but you see the two houses. You see the Republican, which are more so focused on the debt, not wanting to break that off, but you see the leftists, they're more interested in how this money is going to affect their personal gain. Because you see with USAID and with the funding in foreign nations, there wasn't this much backlash over it. So it's quite interesting to see the two houses, how they are looking at this big, beautiful bill.
That's a fair point. And I want to put it to the viewers at home like this. Last year, the United States spent nearly $900 billion paying off the interest on their debt. This is not paying off the debt, it's paying off the interest. If you've ever financed a car, if you've ever financed a home or a big purchase, you understand the difference between paying off the principal and paying off the interest. They spent almost $900 billion paying off the interest. If this bill were to pass, they would be spending close to $1.25 trillion a year paying off the interest. The United States may not make that amount next year, especially in terms of the cuts that they're proposing. So it means that even in our paying off the interest, we would be digging ourselves into an even deeper hole. And that is part of the, not part, that's the entire issue. I mean, imagine buying a car and it's a 6-year term, and that 6-year term just keeps on extending because you can't even pay the necessary minimum payments to make the principal and interest come down. And that's what it looks like the country might be facing. So you have to understand the pushback by even Republicans on this, because we haven't seen a plan for how the economy is going to grow past the interest payments. I mean, we haven't seen it. And maybe if the president and his administration could provide something, then the conversation becomes a bit different.
Of course. Certainly a lot of things to think about in terms of this bill. Now, in other news, President Donald Trump has vowed to impose large-scale fines on California following a state track and field competition in which a transgender athlete won a girls' event. Trump accused California officials of defying his executive order prohibiting biological males from participating in female sports. The athlete's participation in the state finals triggered swift condemnation from Trump, who has previously threatened to withhold federal funds from states that do not enforce his administration's gender policies in athletics. He directed his criticism at California Governor Gavin Newsom, stating the state would face consequences for noncompliance. The executive order in question, signed on Trump's first day back in office, mandates that schools receiving federal funding enforce gender-specific sports eligibility based on biological sex at birth. California officials have not commented on how they will respond to the threatened penalties. Trump's move is part of a broader push by his administration to enforce gender-related policies nationwide. Republican lawmakers have largely supported the effort, while Democratic leaders and civil rights groups are expected to challenge any financial penalties in court. Let's take a look.
A.B. Hernandez from Jurupa Valley High School won 2 state titles at the event. In a Truth Social post last night, the president wrote, quote, "A biological male competed in California girls' state finals, winning big, despite the fact they were warned by me not to do so." The post goes on to say that Governor Gavin Newsom fully understands that large-scale fines will be imposed. It's unclear exactly how much federal money President Trump plans to withhold from California.
Well, America being founded on Judeo-Christian values, I believe that every person in government and every person in power should abide by those values. So the federal government cutting funding to any state for pushing this ideology of transgenderism and so on and so forth, it is utterly egregious for any governor of any state to push this ideology, regardless of what their constituents think, because it is very harmful to them. Now, as we said before, the funding that is given to the states, it cannot be used for the sexual changes, sexual ideologies, and for transgender athletes to perform in female sports or men's sports. You know, this is the position that America finds itself right now. And so the enforcement of President Trump by his executive order on the first day, showing his mind towards the nation, it has to be enforced. And any backlash on that needs to bring forth a questioning of how any governor of any state is thinking. Now, finally, let's take a look at the weather update.
And to end the news today, a quick recap of the headlines. Trump's Medicaid reform bill divides lawmakers along party lines. Federal immigration raids in Los Angeles result in dozens of arrests. Supreme Court grants Trump-era Doge access to Social Security systems. And judge approves $2.8 billion settlement allowing colleges to pay athletes. And that's News Plus for today. Be sure to tune in and join us tomorrow at the same time for more news.
I'm Joel
DK
Richard.
Andre.
And I'm Joel Richard.
God bless you and have a good day.